Well, this isn't an easy story to tell. First, because it involves condensing a career, a life, into a few minutes. But it also involves saying goodbye to someone who has been our leader and our favorite anchor for so many years. Wish TV's Mike Ahern is just days away from his final newscast.
Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A rolls up sound.
Good evening, I'm Mike Ahern.
Let's go back to the beginning.
I'm Mike Ahern.
No, way back. To a day when Mike's dream was to do sports on the radio.
He used to get up in his bedroom and pretend that he was broadcasting. He'd have the windows open and the neighbors would call me and say, "What game are you watching?" You know, because he even had the beer commercials and the whole thing done, you know.
WIRE allowed Mike to make money in radio, but doing news instead of sports.
My first experience with Mike Ahern was listening to him after I came back to Indianapolis from the Navy in May of 1960. And he not only had a great radio voice, but he had a great heart.
And going by is A.J. Foyt, takes the lead.
The Speedway drew him back to sports periodically as part of the track's broadcast team.
The number 1 bird and Mike Ahern.
And here they come into the number 1 bird, accelerating out of the pack.
In 1967, Mike joined the Wish TV news team.
Mike Ahern, more than just a newscaster, he goes where news is happening.
So he's a local guy who's grown with Indianapolis, from a tiny newsroom with typewriters and two-way radios to the sprawling, computerized newsroom of today.
The quality of the reporting is so much better. The equipment, you know, is a sea change from what we used to have. Everything is much better than it used to be. This is a curse and a blessing. I mean, it's beautiful to work on, and it's quick, and it's easy, except when something goes wrong. And then I long for the old typewriter.
He's seen a lot over his 37 years at Wish TV.
37 years. My, how the time goes by.
Lee Giles was Mike's news director for most of that time.
And I doubt that anybody has or will equal that record in Indianapolis.
And over those years, Mike has changed very little.
The news business to Michael was never a job. It was a lifestyle. You know, Michael honestly cared about the world around him and how the events of that world affected the people and the environment and the community in which he lived. So from that standpoint, he never changed.
Now that's just one example of the universal admiration for this man.
He's made life fun. He's made me smarter. So my life has been enriched by working with him. He's an extraordinary person.
Even old competitors offer only praise for Mike.
So when we were around each other, we didn't think of it at all, I don't think. It was just a lot of back and forth, and I just found him a guy with a winning personality and very likable.
Tom Cochran used to be a competitor. Now he's Mike's news director.
It is much better to work with Mike and be a colleague of his than to compete against Mike.
But the awards and admiration don't come just because Mike's a nice guy.
I always thought of him, first of all, as a journalist rather than as a TV anchor, because of his excellent writing. None better as far as I'm concerned.
You have to want to travel this old highway. It meanders so.
Mike cares as much about what you hear on TV as about what you see.
Mike's skill as a wordsmith and a crafter of words and ideas has helped him to excel and have the success that he has.
You see it best in the quiet, sheltered places.
To me, he's always had this gift of always having the right word at the right time.
Mike's wife, Sherry, appreciates that talent, but she also feels viewers appreciated his sincerity and humility.
And everyone knows him, and everyone admires him. People come up to us all the time, and I know they sincerely feel that, and I know, I feel it in my heart. I know they do, and I feel it too.
Good evening. Channel 8 News has learned that
because all he did was what he knew and what he believed in. And from that standpoint, you don't have to be anything other than what you are. That was easy.
Easy, maybe. He's always made it look simple. Still, he has come a long way since those old bedroom broadcasts.
I could hardly believe it ever, you know. It took me a long time to realize that it was my little boy up there.
Eric will have more of his look at Mike's career tonight on News 8 at 11 o'clock.
Well, as you know by now, we're getting ready for a big adjustment. On Wednesday, Mike Ahern will present his last newscast. From the beginning, 37 years ago, he's been an example for the rest of us.
He covers a lot of ground in one day, talks to a lot of people, gets a lot of big news.
From the beginning, Wish TV appreciated the fact that Mike was a reporter first.
Pictures tell the story as you expect to see it. That's why Channel 8 television news is the best.
Years ago, Mike proved that pictures are even more powerful when matched with the proper words.
And here, a long dead autumn leaf and a dying patch of ice appear as two matched pieces of a giant puzzle.
Well, the fact that he could write, that was a major shock because he was an anchor man. People write for him.
Reid Duffy jokes about it, but he knows Mike's skill. They collaborated on Festerwood at 5, a humorous look at TV news in a small town.
And I suppose we have kind of similar interests and similar senses of humor and similar appreciation of the written word.
Mike revealed that side of his personality years earlier in this book of poetry. Tom Cochran still has his copy.
It's an unusual combination to find somebody who is a poet, and a good poet, a very sensitive writer, and somebody who has also been able to survive and have the success that Mike has in the hard world of hard news broadcast journalism.
We might not have shared in that success if Mike had not overcome some hesitation about leaving radio.
He wasn't sure that television was what he wanted to do. He was very happy in radio, thought that that was something that he was doing well, and could he make that transition into television? It was a pretty young business.
And the station was still developing its image. Mike grew into the role and adjusted to the demands of the job.
We are the team. We're Indiana's own.
Now, sometimes the job called for skills he couldn't display at the anchor desk, from football,
team up with Indiana's own,
to basketball.
We play to win.
We went through several rehearsals to get this right.
Even square dancing.
That does look a little staged and corny now, but at the time it was an extremely effective campaign.
We're Indiana's own. Sure are.
This is the part that news people usually dread because it's more acting than it is, news presenting. But it's, this is show business and journalism, so this is what we do.
And Mike never let the show business side go to his head.
And in this business, I think it's pretty common to find people with big egos and people who would make your life very difficult. And he's been just the opposite.
Hey, Mike, better get inside. Storm's coming.
Stan the weatherman has similar recollections of Mike.
Poet, philosopher, comedian, student of the world, I guess you'd say.
But it's the blizzard of '78, being stranded several days at the station, that remains an example of why Stan says Mike is simply a nice guy.
Mike lived at that time fairly close to the station, so he commandeered, I think, our only four-wheel drive vehicle in the newsroom that time, and went home, brought me a clean shirt, a pair of socks, and a change of underwear. He literally gave me the shirt off his back. That's Mike Ahern.
Okay, that's cool.
I think what comes across, and it's not surprising to me, but just comes across as the sheer generosity of spirit that he has, and just by everything he does in working with people.
Okay. He is a wonderful friend, not only a talented newsman, but really an institution in our city.
You're married to a living legend. Can you live up to it? That's the thing.
I don't think so. I don't think I can.
Mike says his achievements would not have been possible without Sherry's willingness to set her interests aside for the unusual demands of his career.
It's one of the things I admire most about Sherry. She's been able to do that with very few complaints. A few.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So a brilliant artist and extremely patient, then.
Patience is a virtue.
And now they'll get lots of advice about retirement.
The longer you're off the tube, the better you were. People say, oh, we miss you, it's not the same anymore, and all this stuff. They never said that when I was on the air.
Mike's departure is the end of an era.
2 seasons in conflict. But in a strange way, also in communion.
And his observations about changing seasons apply to the change awaiting him. Only for Mike, it's long days and deadlines melting away for a life he can finally enjoy on his own schedule.
And all the square dancing he can handle.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow morning, Mike will appear on WIBC at 7:30 in the morning, Real 97.1 at 8:30, and the Bob and Tom Show on Q95 at 10. He's going to be a busy man.
It's nicely done.
Oh,
by the way.
thank you very much.
That was
Well, a
very
great
good.
subject. Trying to go through all those tapes was more fun than work. It was
And you
great.
picked the good ones.
Yeah, thank you.
Time for the weather now. Rain, yes.
Rain, and we are talking a little bit of snow, so plenty to get to on this Monday evening. We'll start.
Looking Back, a tribute to Wish TV's Mike Ahern.
It was a warm, comfortable, familiar feeling when you walked into a place like this. And the movies were different too.
Well, it's my turn now to say a couple of words here. I still have a difficult time even believing that you, Mike, are not going to be sitting at the desk. And I've tried not to think about it, actually, because it's like losing my best friend. And that's what you've been. All of the descriptions of you are absolutely true. You are a gifted writer. You have a keen sense of what news is. You're well read in history and politics. You appreciate hard work. And you don't take yourself too seriously. Your kindness and your smile warms anyone near you. Your sense of humor has made many a long night at the station more than tolerable. Carl Reiner once said, "The absolute truth is the thing that makes people laugh." You have known that intuitively, and it works quite well with journalism. I know what I'm going to miss the most. It's simply sharing a laugh with you. But this is about you. And after all the nights and days working, it's your turn to relax. Let somebody else worry about taping the next promo. You have often quoted Abraham Lincoln at the news desk all these years. "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here." But Mike, your impact at this station and the community will be long noted and remembered. And I'm grateful to have shared 22 years with you. I wish you, Sherry, and Kevin all the best.
Oh, that was lovely. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. And I've got a little thing here for you.
Oh, my goodness, more gifts.
Yes, exactly. Okay. This is the mail bag. and you're taking this with you.
Nobody gets
all
the
the
mail
letters
bag?
are in there. This is Mike's mail bag, folks. We got this especially for you. So you can put this in the Ahern Shrine now or something.
Absolutely.
How many years did you do Mike's mail bag?
1990, so that'd be what, 14 years, I guess?
14 years, yeah. You got lots of comments.
Well,
you took them all.
Mostly emails now, so these are,
exactly.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
I'll
that's
put
right.
this in my collection here.
Yes,
Thank you,
the
Deb.
Mike's mail bag.
Thank
There it
you.
is. Well, where do we go from here?
I guess to me. I guess
Okay.
I think I have a couple minutes here. The station gave me a couple minutes to say goodbye.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, a bit overwhelming, all this. My first temptation is to say I don't deserve this, but then again, I have a bad back. I don't deserve that either. So, but it has been a great ride here. There's an old song that goes, "Don't like goodbyes. I'm not too good at leaving time." And so I'll try to make this as brief and as painless for everybody as possible. A few people, though, I do want to thank, beginning with my family. My wife, Sherry, who's been at my side for 32 of those 37 years, and she's here tonight. Sherry's a gifted artist and singer in her own right, and has rearranged her priorities more than once to adjust to mine. And she's done it with grace and with love, and for that I'm eternally grateful. She is the best part of me. My son Kevin, who's not here tonight, he's pursuing his career in California, but you know, most parents out there will realize your children keep you humble. And for years I was known as at Kevin's school as Kevin's dad, which isn't a bad title to have. He also made many sacrifices over the years, a lot of homework assignments at night that you'd have to cut back to work, get back to the late news, and but he also has done a lot for me over the years, and I appreciate that. My mother, who everyone knows as Kitty, is here tonight as well. There she is. Mom has been at my side as my biggest fan and biggest critic for a long time, way back to radio days some 40 years ago, and she's done it with love and encouragement and support, and she's always called herself my first producer. And in fact, that's exactly what she is. Thank you, Mom. Well, you get a lot of help. in 37 years at a place like this. A lot of people have done a lot of heavy lifting for me. People like Paul Brady, with whom I produced many specials over the years. But to name them all in 37, in just a couple of minutes, it would take 37 more years. And I think our general manager, Scott Blumenthal, has some plans for that time, so I'll be very quick here. I want to thank Scott, first of all, for his support during the last years of my career. And Bob McConnell, if you're watching out there, Bob is the man who first took a chance on a 28-year-old kid 37 years ago. He was a general manager back then, and Bob, I think it worked out for both of us. Thank you very much for having that faith in me. But a couple of people I want to mention specifically here tonight. One is Lee Giles. Lee was the news director here at Wish TV for 35 years, an amazing run in itself, and he just retired last year. Through all the changes we've had in this business, and my goodness have we had some, Lee always kept his eye on the finished product, which was the integrity of the newscast. And for that, it made it delightful to come to work and work for him for that long period of time. I always call Lee the real anchor of our news department, and that he is. Lee, by the way, has been succeeded by Tom Cochran, as most of you know, a good friend of mine, a former competitor at another channel, and of course now I'm proud to have him as a colleague. He has picked up Lee's banner and carries it forward with his assistant Kevin Finch, and there are great days ahead for this news department with those two guys at the helm. And I appreciate him for everything he's done as well. And this is the toughest one of all, to say goodbye to my buddy here. Debbie and I have been together for 22 years at this anchor desk, and most people don't believe this, but I tell them that we've never had a discouraging word between us.
We haven't, yes.
It's been a remarkable relationship, and the reason it works, in great part, is because not only is Debbie a superb journalist, but she happens to be a good friend, and she happens to be one of the finest people I know.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
So you will be missed. Of course, Debbie is carrying on here. She's not going anywhere. Yeah. And Eric will be right here, as you see. And Angela and AC and the rest of this news team is in place. This is not the end of anything. It's, let's call it a turning of the page to a new chapter of the life of this station. As I said with Tom and the rest of the crew, we are moving on to another great chapter here at Channel 8. Great days ahead. I think I have a couple of minutes left here. There's Eric there. Eric's going to be sliding in this chair tomorrow. Of course, Eric and Debbie have been doing this since May at the 11 o'clock news in the evening. So it's an anchor team that you've become familiar with, and I know that you've learned to trust them as well. Finally, to the audience. You guys have been out there for a long time. I've got emails and phone calls from people who said they first tuned in radio some 40 years ago. And to think that you've given me that trust and that support over the years is amazing. I know I've tested your patience more than once, and I appreciate your hanging in there with me. They say that this camera here you're supposed to treat it as a person, not as an instrument, not as a group of people, but a person watching the news in their living room or their kitchen. And I've tried to make that connection over the years, sometimes successfully, maybe sometimes not. But I really feel there's a kind of a bond that's grown over the years. It sounds corny, I know, but you and I have shared so much, so many stories over the years, so many good news, so many bad news stories, and I really feel that we've all survived. I think I'm getting some company here. Yeah, we've all survived together, and that's an amazing thing in your own hometown. I remember back when I was 10 or 11 years old, I used to take my Voice of Music tape recorder up to Ruckle Street, to my bedroom there, and pretend I was broadcasting. And here it is 50 years later, and I'm winding up a career that I can only dreamed of having in a city that I love, and a city where I was raised. And there are men as lucky as I am, sure, but it's a pretty short list. Time's up. Thank you very much for all of this, everybody here, and for you especially who have been watching for all these years. Good night and goodbye. You did a good job.
Oh, you've done a great job.
Patty Duke, Annette Bonicello, Richard Price.
Hey, George, you know what I've been doing during my breaks? Sleep.